Hey guys, today we're going to be working on dividing decimals. And if you notice on some of the problems, you only see that it's the divisor that is going to be that whole number, and the number that is the dividend, that one is going to be the decimal. So what we're going to do first is we're going to kind of understand how we can get our answer. We're not necessarily going to be using our long division or our division problems. We're going to just figure this out by what we already know to be able to figure out our answer, to figure out our quotient. So on letter A, it says I have 4 groups of blank tenths equals 1 6 tenths. Okay. I'm going to tell you one thing. Here's kind of a clue for you here. If I took out that decimal, I would actually have 16 tenths, not 1 6 tenths. I would have 16 tenths. So if you think about this 4 times, because remember that of means multiplication, blank tenths is going to give you essentially 16 tenths. Thinking about 4 times what gives you 16. If you're saying 4, you are correct. So 4 groups of 4 tenths is 16, 1 6 tenths. So I come over here and I say 1 6 tenths divided by 4 is going to equal how much? 4 tenths. Well, you can't just write 4. You can't write 4 tenths. You have to write it in that decimal form, which is going to be a decimal point and that number 4. Okay. Same thing down here. I have 8 groups of, so I'm multiplying of something is going to give me some kind of hundredths is going to give me 32 hundredths. So thinking about this is 8 and 32. 8 times what gives me 32? That's going to be 4. So 8 groups of 4 hundredths is 32 hundredths. So if I take 32 hundredths divided by 8, 4 hundredths is my answer. Now if I were to get my place value chart out, remember 4 hundredths, so I'm going to put my 4 in that hundredths column. Have to make sure that I have that 0 in the tenths, and then there is my decimal. So that's actually how I need to make sure I'm writing 4 hundredths. Oops, I even wrote that incorrectly at the beginning. So this next one is 7 groups of blank thousandths is 84 thousandths. Now this one you might not be able to think about with whatever 7 times something, because it's not going to be a single digit. So I'm just going to kind of think, well, 84, if I have 7 and 84, let's see here, 7 times 10, well, I know 7 times 10 is going to give me 70. And then I know 7 times 11 is going to give me 77. So this is actually going to be 12. Okay, so if you just think about that as 84 and you've got 7, so this says 7 groups of 12 thousandths is 84 thousandths. So I've got 84 thousandths divided by 7 is going to give me 12 thousandths. And remember on your place value chart, if I were to write 12 thousandths, remember that 2 needs to go here and the 1. So I've got 12 thousandths. That 0 needs to be in that tenths column. This is how I would write 12 thousandths. Okay, same thing down here. 5 groups of blank tenths is going to give me 2. Okay, well, if you really look at this, what is that actually? That would be 20 tenths. So 5 groups of blank tenths is 20 tenths. So 5 times what is 20? Well, it's 5 and of 4 tenths, because 5 times 4 is 20, so 4 tenths. So 2 divided by 5 is going to give me 4 tenths, which is that decimal point and a 4. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to continue on completing this number sentence. And there's going to be a couple as we get down here that you're going to see some difference with how we're going to be looking at this number. So this first one is pretty simple. It has 4 and 2 tenths divided by 7. It wants to know how many tenths I have. Yes, I do have 2 tenths, but I also have to include that 4 in there. So I actually have 42 tenths. Because if I pull out my place value chart and I put 4 and 2 tenths, if I were to erase that decimal point and look, because remember there's my tenths, here is 42 tenths. So I have 42 tenths, and now it's going to be a lot easier for me to divide this out, because 42 tenths divided by 7 is going to be how many tenths? It is 6 tenths. How do you write 6 tenths? Well, decimal point 6. Okay. So down here, we're going to kind of figure this all out. We're dividing everything here. It's all being divided by 2. So right now what I'm basically doing is I'm going to be kind of separating this out. So it wants to know how many ones do I have? Well, I have 2 ones. Okay. Now it's wanting to know how many hundredths I have. And if you say 4, well, you're kind of right, because I also need to make sure that I'm including that tenths, because it didn't ask me how many tenths I had. So you want to make sure that you're including all of those hundredths, which is going to be 64. Okay. So now I can actually go ahead and solve this problem, and it says 2 ones divided by 2 is going to be 1 1. And then this is 64 hundredths divided by 2. And just if you need some work and you can't figure it out in your head and you need to show this as a division problem, you're more than welcome to. Because it is 64 hundredths divided by 2, I can just do 64 divided by 2. 2 goes into 6 3 times, subtract 6, that's 0. I'm going to bring down my 4. 2 goes into 4 2 times, minus 4. I have no remainder, which is perfect. So the answer is not just 32, it's actually 32 hundredths. So now if I have 1 and 32 hundredths, to write that in decimal form, it's 1 and 32 hundredths. Okay. This one down here, this one's a little bit different. It wants to know how many ones I have. And just remember, I want to use that whole entire number, because if I'm only going to pick like one number, what's in my ones column and what's in my hundredths column, it's not going to give me the correct answer. So this first one, I want to know how many ones do I have? Well, I can have a total of 12 ones. Okay. Skipped my tenths column, but it says now hundredths. Well, I've got 64 hundredths, and I'm going to divide that by 2. So now I can go ahead and solve this out. So 12 ones divided by 2, 12 divided by 2 is going to give me 6. All right. 64 hundredths divided by 2, well, I already know the answer from up here, so I can just reuse that, and that's going to be 32 hundredths. So this answer is 6 and 32 hundredths, and that is how I write it in decimal form. All right. Moving on to letter D. Now, if you notice this, it's 4 and 26 hundredths divided by 6. And there's no ones. So what they're wanting you to do is they're wanting you to look at that tenths column, and anything that goes before that is going to go with my tenths. So how many tenths do I actually have? Well, I actually have 42. Okay. Now it says how many hundredths? Well, I don't have anything else to go with that, so I only have 6 hundredths. So now I can go ahead and divide this out. So 42 tenths divided by 6 is going to give me 7 tenths. And I'm going to add 6 hundredths divided by 6 is going to give me 1 hundredth. And if I go ahead and put these together, it's 7 tenths plus 1 hundredth. I'm going to have decimal point 71. All right, we're going to go ahead and continue on the back side on the next video.